Now, joining us live on NC Continental Prime to discuss the political situation in Libya is Professor Mustafa Fatturi. Good evening to you, Professor Fatturi. Always a pleasure to have you join us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me, and I'm pleased to be with you again.
Now, Professor Fatturi, Dbeibeh says the audit report, which indicts him and some members of the Tripoli-based government of corruption, is not credible as its timing is political. He also mentioned that the auditor did contest in the failed elections was meant to go against him. How do you react to this?
I'm sorry, I did not hear the whole question. I'm sorry.
Now, Prime Minister Dbeibeh says the audit report, which indicts him and some members of the Tripoli-based government of corruption, is not credible as its timing is politicized. What do you make of this?
Well, of course, he will say it's not credible, and there is every reason actually to accuse the National Auditing Bureau of dishonesty, actually, because the head of the bureau himself, I'm not defending Mr. Dbeibeh or his government here. I mean, they are well-established corrupt government, and Mr. Dbeibeh personally is a very corrupt person throughout his career, even before 2011 and even before he becomes the prime minister over a year ago. But what I'm saying here, Mr. Khale Al-Shakshak, who heads the National Auditing Bureau, is a contestant of the presidential elections, which were postponed last December. So he's, in a way, politically speaking, he's anti-Dbeibeh in this sense. And it's, of course, his kind of, it's a plus for him if he can throw as much mud as possible against Mr. Dbeibeh and his government. But that is, having said that, it does not mean that Mr. Dbeibeh or his government are honest people and they are clean of corruption. Not at all. They actually, the current government, Mr. Dbeibeh's government, is the most corrupt government in Libya's last 50 years of history. It's unbelievable the amount of money they are wasting, not just in direct embezzlement, I would say, but also mismanagement of the economy itself and the financial mismanagement itself, which is hurting the majority of the Libyan people.
Now, Professor Fatturi, do you think the audit report will further widen the political stalemate in the country? What do ordinary Libyans feel about this, and what impact does this report have on the political stalemate in Libya? And as the Eastern-based government in Tobruk of Fatih Bashaga, have they said anything about this audit report?
Well, I don't expect the report of the Audit Bureau to have any action impact in the political life here in Libya. Simply because this is not the first time, and the Audit Bureau have been publishing its annual reports every March, supposedly every March of the year. This time it came in September for some reasons. The head of the bureau itself knows why, and he has his own calculations to make when to publish the report. That's the first thing. So the second thing, in relation to Mr. Bashaga's recognized government, which is not recognized by anybody outside Libya, not even by the majority of Libyans or Libyan institutions, government, state institutions, I mean. Not all of them recognize and accept its orders and validity as a government. I think it will give them some kind of ammunition, if you like, to throw too much mud and fire at Mr. Dbeibeh's government to prove again and over again as well that Dbeibeh is legitimate and his government is legitimate, and they must hand over power to the parliament-elected government, which is headed by Mr. Bashar. Other than that, there is no impact. I mean, we know even from international reports, not just the National Auditing Bureau in Libya itself, but international relevant organizations have always been talking about astronomical corruption figures in financial wise in the country. So it's nothing new, and the majority of Libyan people have seen the similar reports, even worse reports in previous years, particularly in 2020, and nothing has happened. The majority of people do see how bad corruption is in the country and how terrible the toll on them and their daily lives is. But the thing is, they cannot really do much about it, even in terms of street protests, because of the control of the militias, who can fire at protesters, civilian protesters, in a way unimaginable, and will never make the headlines, as we have seen, the international headlines, as we have seen early this month.
Now, Professor Faturi, just before I let you go, you have a situation in Libya where there's militias, like you rightly said, in Tripoli. You also have the Eastern-based government in Tobruk, headed by Fatih Bashaga, and you also have the strongman General Khalifa Haftar. Where do ordinary Libyans stand, and what's the current situation in Libya? Because we've seen incursions by Fatih Bashaga to Tripoli to try and take over government in Tripoli that has led to deadly clashes. And what's the current situation?
Well, it's a standstill situation. There has not been any development since early this month, when the fighting I was talking about erupted in early September between different militia groups inside Tripoli. But, those supporting Fatih Bashaga tried to facilitate his arrival and that of his government into the capital to take over from Mr. Dbeibeh by force, of course, and those supporting Mr. Dbeibeh, who prevailed in the end, and the situation ended up with Mr. Dbeibeh becoming more stronger and more stable, if you like, in terms of staying as a prime minister. But his powers have been limited, in terms of geography, a smaller area inside the capital itself, around the city center, and some surrounding areas not far away. I would say less than 30 kilometers outside the capital, that's all. And while Mr. Bashaga supported with Mr. Haftar in terms of having the military power in the south and the eastern part of the country, in terms of geography, again, he controls not really Bashaga, but Mr. Haftar and his armed forces control the largest chunk of the country, if you like. Other than this, nothing has happened. And, we are waiting for the newly appointed mediator by the United Nations, Abdullah Bathali from Senegal, who is supposed to take over the UN mission in Tripoli probably by the end of this month. And we'll see what kind of magic he might be able to work to solve the situation.
I mean, it might just take magic to end this deadlock in Libya. Professor Mustafa Faturi, always a pleasure having you on News Central Television. Thank you very much for your time and contribution.
Thank you very much.